Hey guys, maybe you have noticed that in the last few days there was a big hype about a specific Uber unique called Melted Heart of Selig. So this Uber unique is an amulet which allows you basically to, instead losing life, you are draining your resources. And this mechanic combined with some other specific mechanics in the game basically allows you to build immortal builds. So the YouTuber Rob has popularized especially the Immortal Barbarian and the Immortal Ball Lightning Sorc. Yeah, these builds are basically immortal, they cannot die. And today I want to present you the kinda immortal rogue. So I also tried to build an immortal build for rogue with this Uber unique. And I have to say just at the beginning of this video that the Immortal Rogue is not as immortal and powerful as the other classes I just mentioned. So the Rogue class doesn't have such great ways to get an insanely good energy regeneration, or at least it has some of them, but it's difficult to combine them with a very powerful build, so like mechanics from Poison Rogue. So yeah, the Rogue class has some problems there, but nonetheless I want to show you this build. So maybe if you also found this Uber unique, and some of you have maybe only found like one Uber unique, so maybe you only have this one, but you don't want to level another class like Barbarian. So then I want to show you my progress I made so far with the Rogue class in this Uber unique, and maybe you can just get inspired to do your own build or just copy this build. So yeah, that's what we will do today. I will show you this build. So you can see right now I'm doing this Nightmare 100 dungeon, and I'm using the same low life tech, as Rob calls it, at least in his videos, as the Barbarian and Sorc. So the idea here is, you can see my health bar is basically empty. So right now I have about 400 life, I believe. So the best case would be if you have, for example, 20,000 life in total, then you should aim for something around 200 to 400 life. And this way you will benefit the most way from some specific mechanics in the game. So the first mechanic that is important for this build to work is the affix that you can find on some items, especially on pants and boots. And this affix is called damage reduction while injured. So damage reduction while injured gives you the biggest damage reduction value that an affix can have. So it goes up to 41.5%, I believe. So if you have this affix on both your boots and on your pants, let's say, then you have a total of about more than 80% damage reduction while injured. And injured means that your life pool becomes quite little, so you have less than 30% of your maximum life. So this is the first part of this low life mechanic, but as I mentioned, we not only want to have little life, but we want to have as little life as possible. And this is because we are using the Vampiric Power Resilience. So Resilience gives us additional 2% damage reduction, or I think 1% damage reduction, per 2% life we're missing. So that's why if we have 200 life left, and we have 20,000 life in total, this means we are gaining about 49% additional damage reduction from the Resilience on Vampiric Power. So this is the technology that basically allows this amulet, the super unique, to work. And here you just saw the entire Nightmare 100 dungeon was basically no problem, because I can tank all of this damage with my energy. And I have some nice energy regeneration, or energy yeah, I don't know how to call it. It's not regeneration, but I create new energy, and this is because I'm wearing a ring, the Umbrous ring. So this is a legendary aspect I put on the rare ring, and this says I get 4 energy generated for each enemy I crowd control. And with this build I am crowd controlling basically all the time. So yeah, this is the idea behind this build, so I can show it here. This is the Ring of Umbral, and here it says restore 4 of your primary resource when you crowd control an enemy. So this ring basically is already enough to gain enough energy in most situations as a rogue, so I can tank all the damage with my energy. But this build has some limitations, let's say like that. So if you compare this build with the Immortal Sorc or Immortal Barbarian, then you can see on YouTube, on some YouTube videos, that these builds basically never die. So they can just stand in the middle of 100 enemies, they can stand in front of the butcher, nothing happens to them, because they have such busted mana or energy regeneration mechanics that they will basically never die to direct damage. But with this rogue this is not the case, so some things can kill us. So this is not a non-brain build like maybe you could call the others. So here you just play the game, normally play the game as usual, and you're just a bit more tanky than without this this melted heart of Selig technology, okay? So this is like the poison rogue, but a bit more tanky, I'd say, in most situations. And here I want to show you one more thing before I start to go over my gear and stuff. So I have tested around different versions of this build, and in the video you saw this version where I only use this ring for my resource regeneration, so only the Umbral ring. But you could also play this Ravenous Band ring, so the aspect is called maybe Ravenous aspect, I don't know exactly. But anyways, you have this aspect here that says killing a vulnerable enemy grants you 70% increased energy regeneration. So 70% is quite a big amount. So we can see our normal energy regeneration is only 15. And we can test this. So if I'm going into a new dungeon here and I just fight a little bit here and there, and I just need to kill a vulnerable enemy, and then you can look, okay, I have 74. So this number goes up to 74. And this is quite a lot because my total energy is 155. So 74 is more or less the half of my entire energy pool. So with this ring I am able to tank even more damage because I can generate my health pool, if you want to call it, because my energy is also my health with this amulet on. So I'm regenerating half of my health bar every second. And additionally I'm generating still my 4 primary resource per energy crowd controlled. So this version is even more tanky, but it has one big disadvantage. So with this ring on, obviously we have one offensive aspect less on our entire gear. So here I'm losing my pestilent points aspect. So this means my puncture will not proc the venomous, the bursting venoms aspect anymore. So I'm completely reliant on the cooldown of my poison imbuement to deal any damage. And yeah, I have to wait. If I don't proc my bursting venoms with my poison imbuement, then I just have to wait until I have my next poison imbuement up. So this is the big advantage with this tanky version. So that's why I prefer to not play with it, but you could actually play with it during the boss, during the normal speed farm clear, and then if you're fighting the boss you could switch this ring with your pestilent ring. So then you have your pestilent points. So for boss fights this ring allows you to spam your poison imbuement and your bursting venoms much more often, and maybe you could use this energy regeneration ring during the normal dungeon clear process. Okay, so now let's go over the rest of the gear. So basically the entire setup is built around Poison Rogue. So I'm having Corruption aspect on my crossbow for my 80% increased imbuement potency, so basically more poison damage. Then I have Twisting Blades on my weapon. I'm playing with Condemnation and T-Bolt's Will, so this combination should be familiar to most of you guys. So Rogue right now has access to a bugged amount of damage, which is pretty high with this combination of Condemnation and T-Bolt's Will. So very recommended for every Rogue build right now. Then, as I mentioned, we want these 2 affixes on the rings. And on the rings, you want as much resource generation as possible. So here I have resource generation affixes on both rings. So this is very important for this build. You want to get as much resource generation as possible. Then obviously the Melted Heart of Selig. So this is the Uber unique, which allows us to build around this immortal immortal build. Then I have found my Harlequin Crest Shaco on how it's called on Thanksgiving. So a very lucky present for me that day. So if you don't have a Shaco, then I will show you in my planner what you can wear instead. But this is also recommended for this build. Then I have my chest with Disobedience, my Bursting Venoms on my gloves. Here it's important that you also have this lucky hit chance of 5% to restore up to 21% primary resource. So we also have quite a big amount of lucky hits, so we will reach on average about 50% lucky hit with our poison imbuement. So this also triggers from time to time and is very good for this energy tanky build. And yeah, then T-Ball's Wilt, as I mentioned, and here I have Shared Misery on my boots. And on your boots, it's also important that you have damage reduction while injured and energy cost reduction. So yeah, this is the gear. So this is basically our poison imbuement or poison rogue setup. We have bursting venoms aspect and the blade dancers aspect. And like I mentioned, we want to switch this ring for pestilent points aspect for bossing. And yeah, this is our setup. The Vampiric Powers, very important, we have resilience. So like I mentioned, for every 2% life we are missing, we will get 1% damage reduction, so very important Vampiric Power for this build. Then we have Flowering Veins and a Cursed Touch. So with this combination we will get 60% increased damage over time. So very crucial powers for the Poison Rogue build. Then we have Ravenous, also very important for this additional attack speed up to 80%. And Prey on the Weak, since this build is also made for Abattoire of Zir. And in Abattoire of Zir especially, the enemies will not immediately die, so the exploit glyph in your Rogue Paragon board is not that good anymore as it was before. Because the exploit glyph only gives you vulnerability for 3 seconds. So if the enemies will not die within 3 seconds, then this Vampiric Power here is much better. So with this Vampiric Power, enemies will become vulnerable all the time basically, because we also have a Cursed Touch. So they all get cursed with the Vampiric Curse, and then they also become automatically vulnerable. So I think Prey on the Weak is also mandatory in the new Abattoire of Zir event. Okay, so these are my gear and Vampiric Powers, and yeah, on the skills, this is like a usual poison rogue. We are not playing with Siphoning Strikes because we don't want to heal, obviously. Actually, here I'm realizing, no, yeah, it's fine, it's fine. I made some testing here and there, but I decided in the end I want to play with Shadow Step. So we need Shadow Step, we need Discipline Shadow Step to cast it as often as possible, because Shadow Step is our only source of getting Unstoppable, and we need Unstoppable for Tybalt's Will. So then we will restore 50 energy, which also, of course, helps us in this build. And also we deal up to 40% more multiplicative damage. So yeah, it's important to basically spam your Shadow Step as often as possible to maintain this damage bonus and resource regeneration mechanic from Tybalt's Will. Since we have no space actually to play with Metamorphosis, at least I cannot recommend to replace any of these Vampiric Powers with Metamorphosis, but of course you can if you want to play a little bit differently. Okay, so that's why we need this Discipline Shadow Step. Then I also play Concussive with trick attacks, so I'm dazing enemies with Twisting Blades, and they become knocked down, and with my Shared Misery, I will spread this knockdown effect to many other enemies. And this is very important because with this Umbral Ring, we want to have as many different crowd control mechanics as we can. So as Rogue, we can slow with Puncture, we can daze with Twisting Blades, and we can knock down with trick attacks after dazing them. So yeah, it's just good to have different kinds of crowd control mechanics. So here Smoke Grenade also dazes enemies, gives me additional damage, and here I can lower the cooldown. Then we're taking all damage bonuses. Guys, don't take Weapon Mastery. Weapon Mastery is currently bugged with many Rogue builds, so if you're playing Rapid Fire Rogue or Twisting Blades Poison Rogue, Weapon Mastery basically does nothing or very little for you, so you can just skip on this if you didn't know. So this is one of the many bugs in the game currently, so don't take Weapon Mastery as a Poison Rogue. And here we also want a lot of lucky hit chance, so this build wants as much lucky chance as possible, because here we also have a chance to gain 8 energy, and this 8 energy will get multiplied by our resource regeneration affix kinda, so we have 90% energy regeneration, so we are basically doubling up this value here, so it's not 8 energy, but it's more like 18 or something, 18, 17, 18 energy. And here, also kind of important, first to mention here, I don't play with haste because I just don't need it. I have enough movement speed from my Twisting Blades, because they also give me up to 80% movement speed. And also I'm gaining 15% movement speed from momentum, which I will talk about in a second. So that's why I don't need haste for movement speed. And actually my goal is to never get lower than 50% of my maximum energy, because obviously I will die if I lose my energy. So that's why the bonus of haste is not really valuable in this kind of build. So that's why I didn't skill it here. And yeah, now let's talk about momentum. So all of the rogues right now take close quarters combat, because this is the most powerful passive and gives you the biggest amount of damage. But with this build, we want to take momentum, I think, because we are first, of course, we are gaining additional damage reduction of 20%. So we are even more tanky, and I feel we kind of need this tankiness to deal our damage and not die. And then we also gain 30% increased energy regeneration, so this also helps us quite a lot with regenerating our resources. So this is basically, these two effects are the main reason why I think momentum could be more worth than close quarters combat in this build. And also, like I mentioned, 15% increased movement speed gives us this maximum movement speed that we just need for this build. So I think overall momentum is better than close quarters combat, but you could also experiment with close quarters combat, and then you will maybe die from time to time, and will have a little bit of a harder time overall, but of course you will double up your damage with close quarters combat. So your choice, but I prefer momentum here. So actually this Paragon board is my old Paragon board, so I'm using it from my other rogue build, so it's not perfect. That's why I want to show you my Paragon board on my planner. So as always, you can find the planner in the description. Here I have some different versions. So this is the Puncture version, is the version I showed you in the gameplay video. So I'm playing with Puncture and Pestilent points here. But you can also have this maximum energy version, or I think I will change the names, but I will make another version where you can play with this ring, like I showed you in the last, like after the Nightmare 100 dungeon. So here I will have again some different versions, but I think I will also overwork them a bit. But this is like the latest version. And here my Paragon board. We are starting with Diminish for additional armor, because we really are desperate for armor in this build. We only have one item, like one gear with a total armor affix, so on the chest. and that's why we are barely hitting 10,000 armor, which we need for reaching 15k with disobedience. So yeah, we need as many armor nodes as possible in the Paragon board. So that's why diminish on the starting board for additional armor bonus. Then Tricks of the Trade board with versatility. This also increases our damage with poison imbuement and also gives us an armor bonus. Then we go to No Witness with efficacy, very efficient glyph for this board. Here we get some maximum life and damage. Then we go to Lyraina's Instinct. We have here the Closer glyph. So this gives us 10% damage reduction basically all the time where we are fighting. So very good glyph. Here we take resistances to all elements, also very important for Abattoire of Zir. And also here poison resilience for poison resistances. And here shadow resilience for shadow resistances in the Tricks of the Trade board. And the last board is Cheap Shot. So here I already have the new glyph implemented. Here we also want this Cheap Shot legendary node for additional damage. And then we will get the most damage if we put the glyph in one of these boards here. So actually I made a mistake in my first Abattoire of Zir Rogue video. I put my Tears of Blood glyph here in the starting board. I still think you can start actually with the starting board because you will need some time to level up this glyph to level 50, so it will increase its radius. But when you will increase this radius with a leveled glyph, you should put it somewhere else, because in the starting board you are just running out of space at some point. So yeah, a little mistake from me here in the last video, so maybe I will do an update video for that. But yeah, here Cheap Shot board with the Tears of Blood glyph. And before you get this glyph, you can play a bit different, so you can also put the Closer glyph instead here and put a combat glyph in the Lyraina's Instinct. It will also give you 12% damage, 12% energy cost refund. But I think it's not that important, so you could get rid of it. And also we need to cut turf in order to get a powerful vampiric glyph. And also I cutted here this rare node, which gives us damage reduction from vulnerable enemies. So here again I have some different versions. So this is like your starting Paragon board. And then when you will level up the glyph, you need to cut a lot of stuff to make room, to make space for this new glyph, which will give you a huge bonus. So yeah, this is the kinda Immortal Rogue build. It's still in the testing phase, so maybe there are better versions of it, maybe there are better builds, but at least this is my first iteration of the Immortal Rogue. So if you found this Melted Heart of Selig super unique, you could try out this build if you like, and tell me if you have success with it or not. So yeah, that's it for the video, guys. I hope you liked it, and I guess see you in the next one. Leave me a like if you like my content, or or subscribe to my channel, would be very nice. And I see you in the next one. Have a nice day, and bye bye.